So, as usual, an excellent week of excellent comments, and one in particular standing out. Well, a few in particular standing out, but one in particular standing out from an individual whose name they did not want me to say, but how can I not? Literally, their name is Athena. So this is coming from an individual that wanted further conversation of some of the things that I was saying, and the way that they heard what I was saying from last week, how I was talking about the manner in which the conversation has to approach itself, the kind of seriousness yet ease, and not being too serious with the experience of the devotional journey that the conversation needs to really grasp and take hold of, and to take responsibility and accountability for. What I was saying, they heard this, and their immediate response was, and I made a note of it, it was, it's better to be an ant than a grasshopper. And so, hearing this, thinking like, that's crazy because why are you saying that? That's literally in the Bible already. And I don't think they knew because they were just as surprised as when I said this. And then I told them this verse, the verse of Proverbs 6, 6 through 8. Proverbs 6, 6 through 8, which I have here. It reads, Go to the ant, thou sluggard, consider her ways, and be wise, which having no guide, overseer, or ruler, provideth her meat in the summer, and gathereth her food in the harvest. And what they told me was, I don't even think they knew about this proverb. They told me that they knew this basically from a nursery that they heard some, I don't know, but it's a nursery that they heard. And when I asked for further elaboration on what they thought about that, they said, well, ants have a way of carrying themselves. Ants have a way of gathering for themselves in the winter and for preparing. Keep in mind, they've never seen this proverb, but this is what they're telling me. They have a way of gathering for the winter and preparing themselves for upcoming seasons, while grasshoppers are just playing around in life. Like that's what they said. And then I read them this proverb. I showed them this proverb, and it was one of those where they were like, "Yep, I said it." But to me, it was more one of those things like, crazy that you said that, because everything that I said last week, everything that had to do with the individual conversation taking responsibility for its pattern of growth. I talked about how I myself ventured into Ezekiel 13 for 2, 3 years, no guide. Um, that was also another thought that came to me was after hearing what I said last week. Another individual asking me if I was led into Ezekiel 18 by someone. No. Um, It was strictly inquiry from need within myself. And I opened to the Bible until that's where I opened to. And that's where I stayed for the next 2.5, 3 years. No guide, no overseer, no minister, no ruler, no one. It was simply me and Bible for those 3 years. And that's the point I was trying to make. And that point I was trying to make, they heard that, and in response said that everything that I was saying, it sounded like it's better to be an ant than a grasshopper. And that, like, from that moment, that was like 2 days after, 3 days after last Justification Live. But from that moment, I wanted to just jump back, and I couldn't wait until this moment right now, because there's a lot of wisdom that the Bible has for us in everything that I have been saying. And it's just like, not that I'm just saying it, Bible has this. And the philosophy that I am saying that I have received from the Bible, I'm showing it from the Bible, and I'm showing it in different ways to articulate the fact that although the blueprint that we have traditionally inherited, although the blueprint is the philosophy of the religious law, meaning the blueprint is um, piety, favor, righteousness to the divine eye, and for and from the divine eye, along with favor, through deeds, through acts. That's the blueprint of the religious world. And if you're reading the Bible on the surface, you're going to find out that that's the blueprint that the surface understanding of the Bible markets and advertises. Yet everything that I have been pointing out for these past couple of months here and then on justification is a contrary philosophy to that. That although that is the surface, when you penetrate into the Bible, there is a contrary philosophy on how to handle the living human experience and the living devotional experience. Example, Proverbs 6, 6 through 8. Go to the ant, thou sluggard, consider her ways and be wise, which having no guide, overseer, or ruler, provideth her meat in the summer and gathereth her food in the harvest. Now, everything here in this proverb, everything here, it contradicts everything we expect the Bible to be. On the surface, we expect the Bible to be a Moses religion. A Moses religion is a religion that is guided by the philosophy of the religious law. A Moses religion guided by the philosophy of the religious law is a religion that is guided by handwritten religious laws concerning deeds, acts, ceremonies, beliefs on theories, rituals, baptisms, so on and so forth, on how to carry the conversation via physical stimulus. What we're reading in the Proverbs here concerning the ant is wisdom that is contrary to that. How is it contrary to that? Look at the ant and go to it. Consider the ways of the ant. The ant has no guide. The ant has no ruler. The ant has no overseer. All three of these words we can chuck up to Moses. There is no Moses for the ant. Yet, the ant goes about its business gathering for itself, and especially for in times of need. We have in this proverb a philosophy that is contradicting the general traditional thought concerning the blueprint of the religious world. And it's again amazing that someone heard me saying what I was saying last week, and what they heard, it led them to say, and they never even saw this proverb before, it led them to say it's better to be an ant than a grasshopper. That's mind blowing to me. It's mind blowing to me because, first of all, that's already in the Bible. That's already in the Bible. And as soon as they said that, it reminded me of this proverb. Because you have in this proverb the actual core philosophy that the Bible is. And as I always say and have said prior or previously in previous times, the Bible does not tell anyone what to believe and how. Last week I talked about how there is passion and desire for understanding. And if there is, you don't need anybody to show you anything because you're just going to just do it. Think about all of the times where we have passion and where we have a desire for something, and whatever is in us, it's moving us to just unconsciously do what subconsciously we want to understand. We're getting the information from how we get it, and we're building up a catalog of thoughts to put together a concrete body of understanding to physically do, to mentally achieve, and to mentally do, and to physically achieve what we need to for the desire that we have. No guide is necessary, no nothing is necessary. In taking that instance and placing that into the context of the devotional conversation to the individual seeker in need for understanding. The individual seeker in need for understanding will be just as the ant. They will not need a guide. They will not need a seeker. They will not need, sorry, not seeker. They will not need an overseer. They will not need a ruler. And just going to keep this simple. Each and every single one of us are different. Just as to some, a kind of food may be injurious, yet to another not. the kind of experience that we need, we measure that out according to who we are and where we are. We measure that out. But I'm talking about specifically the individual who is hungering for understanding, the individual that is knowing that there is a lacking within, and that is not content to turn to any other eye or any other mind, yet to the Bible itself, and to spend however many years that is necessary to get that understanding for themselves. Everything that I said last week, this one individual summed up in like 5 seconds. And it's mind blowing because it's legit. And Bible tells us, observe the ant and how they operate, having no overseer, ruler, or guide. And I don't have this here, but in the same sense, another proverb says, guide thine own heart in the way. Another proverb says, guide thine own heart in the way. What is that way? The Bible never tells us. Why doesn't the Bible tell us? Because then that would just ruin the point. It would ruin the point because the individual seeking understanding, they don't need to be told what that way is. They will find it. They will find it out. There is no fear. Again, that reminds me of that verse. Perfect love casteth out all fear. We remember that verse from 1 John. Perfect love casteth out all fear. There is no fear when it comes to understanding, or should I say, to the individual wanting understanding and understanding that there is a lacking of understanding. There is no fear for them to find understanding because the love of understanding is enough to conquer that fear. The individual that is willing to allow the love of understanding to conquer their fear will become like the ant. And when becoming like the ant, they won't need a guide. They won't need an overseer. They won't need a ruler over the body of their belief or over their understanding. Because desire for understanding, that's motivating. And the words of which they are to be motivated from are what inspires them to continue moving forward. And so, highlighting at this moment that ant and the wisdom therein that is embodied. Bible already has this highlighted. It is the responsibility of the individual conversation to gather to itself a storage of understanding, to gather to itself a storage of wisdom that it can carry forward for its own self. And scouring through and going back and forth and investigating and examining self by what is uncovered, well, that's how storage is gained. Going back to my experience with Ezekiel 18, it was during those 1, 2, 3 years with that chapter, only that chapter during those years. Of course, there are other chapters of the Bible, but this one chapter and the content therein being the main guide for research, this allowed me to understand the character of the mind that is within the scriptures. That the character of the mind that is within the Bible, it's not Christian. The character of the mind that is within the Bible, it's not Jewish. The character of the mind that is within the Bible, it's not anything assumed or thought. It is a mind and a personality of its own, and a specific experience is given from it for a particular mind. That's really what the Bible is saying in Proverbs 6:6-8, when it is saying, observe the ant, consider its ways, has no guide, overseer, or ruler, yet it provides meat for not just itself, but for the members of it. And gone through the illustrations before, meat to the Bible is not literal meat. Meat to the Bible it falls back down to wisdom, understanding, doctrine, or philosophy. So if we're going to be as the ant, as the Bible instructs, And the Bible instructing, or the author of the book of Proverbs instructing the individual to consider these ways, to consider these ways. Well, the author writing the Proverbs is counseling the individual, reading and examining their work, to take full responsibility and accountability for the members that are within the body of their belief. Gather from the source or from the field of understanding that the mind inspiring the Bible is. Gather to yourself. And in that sense of gathering, store up. And in that sense of storing up, keep to use for time and need, not simply just for yourself, because that's the bottom rung of Peter's ladder. Remember last week we talked about that bottom ladder of Peter's, that bottom rung of Peter's ladder being a rung of adding virtue to your faith. That's only the bottom rung. The top rung is self-sacrificing benevolence, or in one word, is charity, which translates to self-sacrificing benevolence, meaning that everything done through that climbing experience of that ladder for the devotional conversations, thoughts, and feelings, it is all only supposed to be for inspiring, educating, empathizing with another mind, that they may do the same, and another mind that they may do the same in a benevolent fashion, in a fashion exercising empathy. So the Bible isn't really just calling for an experience just to have an experience. The Bible doesn't really find any use in just having an experience where the body's just going through the motions, which is the blueprint of the religious world, taking the body through the motions of a human religious experience that is perpetuating a spiritual movement within and around. Bible's not about that. Bible wants actual change within. And another word for change, as we find in the book of Ruth, is redemption. Another word for change, again, an example as we find in the book of Ruth, is redemption. The changing or the redeeming we find in these words in the book of Ruth. And the question is what is to be changed and what is to be redeemed? And the answer we find in the book of Ephesians: put off your former conversation and be renewed in the spirit of your mind. To the Bible's mind, changing or the redemption is to take place not to the human being, not to anything within the human being. Bible philosophy falls back down to the devotional conversations, thoughts, and feelings. It is the conversation that is to be put off and to be exchanged for a conversation that is renewed in the spirit of its mind. So the idea, which I have reviewed plenty of times, concerning the definition of redemption as it is within the scriptures, it breaks the traditional mold, because Bible definition is not the definition of traditional religious theory. To the Bible's mind, what is to be redeemed is the devotional conversation. Why? The devotional conversation is created within the religious world. Every single conversation that is religious or devotional is created within the religious world. The Bible's philosophy understands, or the mind inspiring the Bible's philosophy understands, that what is created within the religious world is fraudulent. We don't know that if we are faithful and sincere in our desire for self development, self growth, personally and devotionally. We will understand this. We don't understand this, but Bible does. Bible's mind understanding this encourages the individual conversation to put itself off in order to regenerate into an acceptable conversation for the individual person and for the individual devotional experience. Again, that's what's meant when it says, put off your former conversation and be renewed in the spirit of your mind, and put on the new mind or the new man, which is created. Our natural devotional conversation is not a creation, it is an adoption, it is an inheritance. It's not ours. What is to be ours is what is to be created. And what can be created can only be created through renewal. And what can be renewed can only be renewed once the conversation that is inherited or adopted is put off. And the only way that we can ever put off our inherited or self cultivated or adopted conversation is by turning to the ant. Turning to the ant to see the ways, as it says, and as is true as I have experienced my own self, of understanding the fact that there is no guide that is needed, there is no ruler, minister, priest, pastor that is needed. There is nothing that is needed. Bible is instructing the individual to look at the ant. And we are all bombarded by ants, right? We are all bombarded by ants, especially in specific seasons. They're everywhere sometimes. They're just doing what they do. But if we had to pay attention, as the author of the book of Proverbs clearly has done, well, then we would get the lesson therein. And the lesson is that the example of storage that the ant gives is an example to take and to consider. As it says, consider her ways. That's Proverbs 6 through 8. Consider the ways of the ant. Our devotional conversation and our experience is to gather to itself wisdom for storage. Wisdom for storage in times of summer, wisdom for storage in times of harvest. Now, these are seasons. We can be in summer and winter right now. We can be in harvest and summer right then. These are not literal seasons. These are seasons of which the devotional conversation and our human being will go through. In these seasons, we are to have wisdom for use. And the only wisdom for use that we can have is wisdom that has been gathered together. Not by anyone else, not by any other mind, not by any other document, not by doing any other ritual, but by handling the content that is within the scriptures. It is the handling of this content that will allow us to have for our individual experience the wisdom that is necessary to progress it, to move it forward, to advance it. That's why she said to me, it's better to be the ant than a grasshopper because the grasshopper is always playing, they said, but the ant is gathering for itself for winter and for times of when it needs. Bible is letting its reader know that it needs to be as the ant. And so you have two opinions because you can go to the book of Joshua, chapter 1, and then in Joshua chapter 1, Joshua is told to read all of the book of the law. That the book of the law is the strength of Joshua. And then you get to Proverbs, and then you see the author of the book of Proverbs saying, go to the ant, who has no guide, who has no book of the law, who has no overseer, who has no Moses, yet gathers to themselves. The Bible will not tell the individual how to live their devotional life. Yet there are illustrations within the Bible of two devotional lifestyles in stark contrast and in direct conflict with one another. And if you go to the core of the Bible, you will actually see that the lifestyle of the ant is more preferable than the lifestyle of Joshua, than the lifestyle of Moses. This is at the core of the Bible. Because Bible understands, again, that there is more to the human being and that there is more to the human condition than what Moses can give. That's again why the illustration of the ant is given. We are to be as that ant. And at this point in time, there is no book of the law, but there is a book of the philosophy of the living God, which is Genesis to Malachi. That's the foundational philosophy. That's the foundational philosophy of what the core of the Bible is. And understanding that core philosophy, we will then be able to make sense of Matthew to the Revelation. And that core philosophy directing the individual to an experience that is personal, to an experience that is where the human being or the being of the human is coming into a direct confrontation with the character of the conversation and vice versa. And it is through this confrontation that marriage is supposed to take place. And it's that marriage that takes place that is to be the means fueling the desire for a continuance, for self regulating the learning experience with the Bible's words. And so everything that, the different dialogues that took place after last week up until this time, just inspiring just me to point this out because that's just crazy to me. Well, what's crazy is the individual hearing me speak, not just that one, not just her, but different individuals hearing the things that I'm saying, and they're connecting them to their own life, and they're seeing that within their own life there are literally Bible verses for the innate philosophies that they carry, and to point these things out and to show that this exists within the Bible, and to show that their experience has not been for nothing, not been for naught. It's been for the progression of something intimate and personal with the words of the Bible and everything therein. It's absolutely phenomenal because everything that I'm saying, it's becoming real to the individuals that are listening. And the experience that I've been having with the scriptures, it's not isolated, it's not individual. As I've been saying weeks prior, the experience isn't for everyone, and recently the seeker for what is within the scriptures will not need a push. They won't need a shove from anyone outside or from anything outside of themselves. Everything will be for or from what is within. And so I'll stop there for now because the essence of the ant is to be embodied. And in all that we pass through in this week, to embody that essence to the fullest for the purpose and for the very blatant intention for having a wisdom to exercise in time of need. That's what Bible philosophy is about. That's what the mind within the Bible would have the individual understand is that despite the blueprint that exists concerning religion, the wisdom of the ant, it's crazy, but the wisdom of a small ant, a small creature, the intelligence that has been fixed within that small creature is what our devotional experience is to mirror.